Welcome to the BEASTwriter Family, where social media engagement is encouraged. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we have the honor and privilege of having my good friend Omar Ruiz of NFL Network on the show. You guys know Omar Ruiz. He's on NFL Network like 24/7, 365. Omar, thank you for tuning in to the BEASTwriter Family show. Mahalo for joining us on this Thursday. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Ryan. It's fun to connect with you. Obviously, with the pandemic and everything, we haven't really been able to travel too much and see the people that cover the teams in the various cities over the years and the relationships that we've built. So, able to connect here on this show. It's a fun experience to catch up with you, man.
Yeah, always. I think the first time we connected, it was funny. I took a screenshot. What happened was, I don't know how often you're on LinkedIn, but I am never on LinkedIn. I should say rarely, but never on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I literally got a direct DM or what do you call it? A message from LinkedIn from a guy that I worked at Fan Cave during the time that we met. Coincident. This is all coincidence.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I was checking on my computer because I don't have it on my app on my phone. Although
Yeah.
I'd see the notifications. So I'm scrolling through it and I'm like, oh, wow, there's like a lot of inbox, a lot of stuff in my inbox. So I was like, I'm just going to scroll through. And literally, you were one of the first people when I opened up a LinkedIn account. And I was like, that was like the second email or message that I got. And it was from you. And I just wanted to give you a screenshot.
Do you remember that date? Do you remember what date that was?
I do not remember the exact date. It's on there though, I think.
Yeah, I want to say it was from 2014. So
It was from 2014.
That was before I even had kids.
Yeah.
I think that was 3 kids ago.
I know you're such a family man. And then when you did have kids, because we would talk about this, you're like, oh man, I'm so tired today. I was like, how do you do it? You know, and my wife's so understanding. And then I'm like, dude, you're on the road a lot. You're like, I know, I feel so bad. And then other days you're like, oh, it was great. Like, you had your morning cup of Joe. No, tell people how hard it is to be in the NFL media or in the sports media in general, and then juggling the family life. Because what people don't understand is it's a sacrifice from both sides.
Yeah, it's well, first, let me plug my wife here. She's the greatest wife in the world that is able to kind of make it all go and allow me to sort of be able to grind the way I do and be on the road as much as I am. At least, pre-pandemic, I would expect, this season we're going to kind of get back to normal. But so she does a great job with the kids. And I think one of the challenges that I think during the pandemic was, I'm on the road so much during the season, even in the off season, we would travel a lot that I'm away from home. But when I was at home, I was just, dad time, let's have fun and let's make the most of the time now that I'm home. And sort of, I would leave work just kind of on the road or when I'd work in studio, I do work then. But during the pandemic, we're all working from home. So this was a unique challenge in that we have a small little house, so there's no office. So a lot of the times I'm working in the living room or I'd go out into the patio or really just find space because, we had a newborn baby too at the time. So, she had priority to everything. But my kids would come up to me and they'd say, Dad, let's play, because they're just so used to when I'm home, it's just playtime.
Yeah.
And so having to adjust to that, say, hey, I can't play. Like, even though it looks just like I'm on my phone, I'm reading, I'm researching, or I'm on my iPad, or, I'm doing all this sort of stuff. And, the flip side to that was that they were able to kind of see me at work when I do the at-home studio stuff, and they could be on camera and things of that nature. But in general, the balance that you were talking about, I think for me and for our family, the way we've been able to make it work is I've been able to accumulate, because I travel so much, so many miles and hotel points and everything like that, that we've taken a lot of cool trips essentially for free, because we've racked up so many. So that's the flip side. So I'm gone a lot during the season, but we've been to Australia and Hawaii and Costa Rica and all that, really with us just paying for food on those trips. So to create those memories, especially while the kids haven't been in school. So we've been able to go in February and March or whenever the case may be, whenever I have that downtime during the NFL calendar and they haven't been in school, we've had no problem taking them out of preschool or whatever. It might get a little more challenging now that they're entering full kindergarten, first grade, now that they're kind of back to school. Because, we even went a little bit on trips last year during the pandemic, to like a ski trip or something where, we were able to be safe, isolated, and they were able still to do school at the hotel or the cabin or whatever, as long as they had Wi-Fi. But now that it's a little more challenging with them actually in school, in class, it'll be a little bit harder. But that's the sort of balance that we struck, that my wife kind of holds it down. She knows that during the 5-6 months of the season, that sort of, I can be gone for up to a week and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of what we signed up for. And then the flip side is all the downtime and the cool trips that we've been able to take in the off season.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give credit to both you guys, you and your wife, because at the end of the day, it comes down to compromising and understanding that compromise. I had Randy Mueller on the show yesterday, and he talked about the scouting perspective, right? So we talk about if you're a scout, you're on the road 9-10 months out of the year. Yeah. And if you have a family, it's the spouse that's going to be suffering, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones that have to pick up the slack. And, that can be difficult. So I would say your wife, and people like your wife, I give them so much credit. I give you credit too, but you have to give them credit, because in the line of business that we're in, we are on other people's time. Yeah. Right. Truth be told, we're on other people's time. When breaking news comes out, you have to be the first one to report it. You have to. That's your job. And for you to have a wife to, 3 a.m. in the morning, sometimes, hey, Omar, you have to hop on the next hour and a half on the Good Morning Football show or something like that and do a special feature on this story. That's what you're going to have to do. So yeah, you've been awesome. And again, from the first day I met you, you've been friends 7 years now, 2014, before you had kids. And here we are 7 years strong. And you're still the same guy. You're funny. You're very approachable. You're humble. Yeah. All these things I learned from you. And I really appreciate it. So again, thank you. I don't think you hear it enough, because again, when I'm at the gym, right? And I text you sometimes, I'll shoot you pictures on Twitter. Yeah. Okay. Literally, NFL Network is playing on the corner of the treadmill. And every time I go into the gym, because they know who I am, I say, I need this for work, because I need to tweet stuff out. And they're like, oh, and then they follow me on Twitter. And they're like, who's that? That Omar Ruiz guy? Like that guy's good. And I was like, yeah, no, he sucks. and then they joke around and I'm like, nah, he's really good. I know, duh. I was like, that's my boy. And then they're like, oh, no way. I was like, yeah. And so I just think it's funny, because it's really interesting when you're in the limelight, right? But then when you're in it, you don't really feel the influence that you have on others, because you're in it. You're the one in it. So the perspective of someone else seeing it from a different lens, I think, is very interesting. And I just want you to know you're doing the strong work, and everyone, especially at Villa Sport, sees what you're doing. So keep up the good work. Let's go ahead and move on. San Diego State University, our alma mater. Go Aztecs. Let's talk about that. You went to school there, and how did that come about?
Well, I say I grew up a huge UCLA fan. My dad went to UCLA Law School, and he was a big UCLA fan growing up. I think he was maybe 13, 14 years old, something like that, when John Wooden won the first NCAA championship in basketball. So he was a huge UCLA fan. He went to law school there. So we were raised huge UCLA Bruins, and I felt like I was always poised to go there. But when it came down to actual, selecting colleges and stuff like that, I noticed they didn't have a journalism department. They had a communications department, but not an actual journalism department. And so that was like, that's what allowed me to select, maybe I should explore some other places. Syracuse was one. I was a huge college, because having that UCLA, upbringing, huge college basketball fan. I'd watch all those big Mondays on ESPN when the Big East was first going to greatness. So, Syracuse, St. John's.
Oh, Georgia, my gosh.
All those were kind of on my list too, but I just felt it was unrealistic to go to the East Coast for college at that point in time. And so anyway, when my best friend in school had an older brother who was a senior when we were freshmen in high school. And the senior, when we were freshmen, that was the star quarterback, star shortstop, star point guard. I went to Christian Brothers in Sacramento for our school, was Kevin McKechnie, and he got a scholarship to play quarterback at San Diego State. And so he had to wait, his turn, and he finally became the starter going into, I think, his redshirt senior year. And this is when Will Blackman, I think, was a receiver there, Oz Hakeem.
Wow.
So they had some really good, talented players
Yeah.
on that squad. And so the summer before, so anyway, my best friend's brother lived with Kevin down in, San Diego. They were roommates, at apartment there on campus. And so we would always go visit, while older brother, my best friend's older brother lived in San Diego. We would go visit him on occasion, and just were just blown away by how much fun we had and going to the beach and all that good stuff. And then sort of the capper was the capper was we went down there, and now he's living with the starting quarterback of the school. And so we're going to these crazy football parties, and Ephraim Salam, who ended up playing in the NFL, was there, and all these big name guys that eventually went to the league, and it was just such a good time. I was like, man, if this is life down here, man, this is where I want to be. So then I kind of shifted gears, and obviously looked into the academics, and they had a strong journalism program, and there was quite a few big name journalists that had gone there. So I figured, okay, I'd be in good hands academically here, and I can be by the beach and all that good stuff, because I was 10 when we moved from Southern California to Sacramento. And like, we were the type of family when I was a kid that we'd go to the beach every weekend and all that kind of stuff. So I always felt like, I loved that. So that was very appealing, and a huge draw to going to school in San Diego. And then again, the academics lined up for what I wanted to do, and the rest is history, and couldn't have had a better, undergraduate experience there.
Yeah, San Diego State and San Diego in general, I'm jealous because I tried to live there on my own right after I graduated. My mom's like, "You want to live out there?" I said, "Yeah." I'm kind of like a mama's boy, I'm not going to lie. So I did get homesick. I lived up in Poway, where I was actually LaDainian Tomlinson's neighbor up in Poway at the time.
Wow.
And and it was gorgeous. There's like no one there. It's like equivalent to, I guess, what San Ramon would be back in the day. And the suburbs. But I liked it. I loved it. I love the weather. I love the food. I love the people. I love the beaches. I love Mexico. I'm a huge Mexican man. Mexican food is my guilty pleasure. And the lobster tail in Puerto Vallarta.
Puerto Nuevo.
Oh my gosh. Like, okay, you can get a lobster tail for like $5, bro.
Yeah.
$5 for a big, and it really tastes like it came from the sea. And
well, not only that, but then for $12 you get 2 lobster tails, all you can eat rice, all you can eat beans, all you can eat tortillas.
Oh, that's right.
And they're all fresh right there with the butter coming. Like, oh man, what a great trip that was. Jeez.
Yeah. We took a party bus over there. Did you guys do the same?
I don't think I ever took Martha's party bus. Did you ever take that? She would take you down to the border. Yeah. And then pick you up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or whenever you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know the name.
You would have to cross on foot, and then take a cab.
Yes.
Wherever you want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We went on a party bus. It was actually my sister. She was an ambassador for San Diego State. I wasn't even intending there yet. Get this. Okay. This was like a recruiting process for her. And we went on this party bus, and I was like, man, we went to Papa's and Beer, Club Iggy's, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, whoa. And she's like, don't tell mom we're doing this. She's probably watching this, and my mom's going to kill her after this. But she doesn't know that story. But I had fun.
I remember we would just go on a Friday night or a Saturday night when it was spring break time, and we'd go down to Rosarito Beach or wherever, and just go party for the night. And you get all these kids from Texas and Arizona and wherever coming for their spring break, and we'd just be going for the night and kind of gravy train off their spring break, and everybody having a good time. And there's quite a few memories. We actually even did a spring break there one year, and like a 4-day 3-night type of thing. Yeah. In Rosarito, and just Papa's and Beer. Yeah, it's kind of legendary experiences at those places.
Rosarito is probably one of the best times of my life till this day. Definitely top 5. If you had a chance to go to Mexico, go to Rosarito or Cabo San Lucas. Cabo San Lucas was another one. It's kind of further in, but Yeah, I love Mexico. It's legit. It's legit. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about you being a minority in the NFL media. Okay, so you're breaking barriers. Okay, you know this. Everyone knows this. You, MJ Acosta, all you guys are really breaking barriers, being the pioneers of breaking into the industry, especially in the NFL media. So my question to you is, being a minority, do you find yourself as a little bit of an outsider while breaking these barriers when covering the NFL media?
I can't say I felt like an outsider. I mean, I sort of know that I'm breaking barriers, and kind of as I've kind of reflected on my journey and the sort of lack of you know, people like me, you know, Mexican American, Latinos, you know, Hispanics, however you want to call it. Yeah, I know there aren't that many of us covering the NFL, but at the same time, I've always felt, you know, it's been a pretty welcoming place, and you know,
Right.
and having traveled to you know, Jacksonville and Charlotte, and New England, and all over the country, Green Bay, Cincinnati, even places where, you know, you might be stick out even a little more because of those differences. You know, I've always just been treated, you know, warmly, fairly,
Right.
not of course by the teams and players and everything, but just even the people in town in these
Right.
places. You know, the people checking you in at the front counter at the hotel, you know, waiters, waitresses at restaurants and stuff like that. So I've never felt like an outsider in that department. I think people, and I think it's maybe the culture of NFL media has been pretty welcoming. And, you know, I just think of, you know, a lot of big names out there,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like Bob Glauber from New York, and Sam Farmer in Los Angeles here, you know, guys like that just kind of, you know, take their arms around you and kind of, you know, when those kind of big names kind of welcome you and express, you know, a friendly, you know, kind of relationship with you, it kind of makes you feel that, okay, you do belong. And I single out those two guys because it came off the top of my head, but you know, there's been so many others out
Right.
there where, you know, I haven't necessarily felt that. And I think just kind of growing up in California, where, you know, there's a lot of people like me, not necessarily in sort of NFL media necessarily, or even in sportscasting, you know, nationally, but I think just in growing up, you know, there's just so many of us that, you know, I sort of never necessarily felt like an outsider. Maybe a few times, maybe when I lived in Syracuse, you know, a couple times, you know, but not having to do with work, just in general sort of
Right.
thing, fish out of water, so to speak. But for the most part, you know, I felt very welcomed, and it's been a great experience, you know, kind of being ingratiated with sort of the NFL media, both you know, in my own workplace and just in my travels around the country.
Do you feel, if I can piggyback on this, do you feel like you're kind of the, how do I say it? Like, do you put pressure on yourself because you're basically a pioneer breaking into the industry? For me, I can't speak for anyone. I know for me, uh, because I think it's a cultural thing, you know, out of it's all about honor, right? I'm part Japanese, so it's all about the honor system. Everything's around honor. Don't disgrace your family name, things like that. So I feel like internally I'm held to a higher standard because, you know, my peers, my friends, they all look up to me being in the industry, and being an Asian American in the industry. That's just something that I put on myself. No one to blame but myself. But it's just something that I do. I can't. What is it? It's just a mental block I
No,
can't get out of my head.
yeah, I do feel that. Yeah, because I know
Okay.
that you know, if we don't do well, you know, like you mentioned, MJ and you know, myself and whoever, you know, you or, you know, whatever sort of different uh, minority group you might be at, if you don't do well and you're one of the first ones, and it may be a while before another one comes down the pipeline and gets those same opportunities. So yeah, I do feel like there's pressure um, to do well and to perform well. And it was funny, I was on a couple of uh, friends of mine that cover the Chargers. They started a podcast called Compas on the Beat.
Oh,
Gilbert and Fernando. I don't know if you know them, but
I'll
they
check them
asked
out
me,
now. Yeah.
Yeah, they asked me a question that said, was there ever a point where you got nervous or whatever, and like, flubbed or something like that? And I said, not really. Like, of course, I've messed up before, but not because of nerves or whatever. Because like, I am kind of so locked in when I go, because I felt like, yeah, there's no room for error. Like you got to be kind of at your best all the time, so that way,
Yeah.
hopefully, other people coming behind you will have those opportunities and not. You know, be somebody who makes mistakes. This guy can't do it, and maybe other people that kind of look like him or sound like him, won't be
Right.
able to do it either. I would hate for that to ever be even a thought in my head. And like you said, it's an internal thing, might just be in my own head, but it
Yeah.
is a real thing that I have thought about, just kind of like how you acknowledged there.
Yeah. Staying within the NFL media, where did your passion come from when covering sports?
Good question. I say my dad
Okay.
was a huge sports fan.
Okay.
He went to his first Dodger game, I think, when he was 10 years old, and like I said, was a teenager during the UCLA basketball run, and was a big Lakers fan. When Elgin Baylor and Jerry West and all that stuff. In the 60s and 70s, and so sports was a big part of our lives. And then from my dad's side, then my mom had 7 brothers, and and they were all kind of like star athletes. I had one uncle who's 6'6".
Jeez.
He played D1 at UC Irvine basketball, and then I had other uncles that were sort of dominant in high school and stuff like that. So anyway, sports was always a part of our lives. And then I was a pretty good just you know amateur athlete or kid athlete, whatever, little league and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I knew that was a big part of my life. Just I love competing, I love playing, I love playing a bunch of different sports too. And then I was one of these kids. I was one of these 5-year-olds that was reading the LA Times, so like Alan Malamud, I remember, was a columnist that wrote just like a series of sentences. So for a kid, it was really easy to read. It was, he would just give observations and thoughts. And so, I just remember reading the paper just as a young kid, and learning stats and stories of the game, and even those simple kind of columns. And I remember, my uncles, and just like probably many little kids out there that do this kind of stuff. My uncle's quizzing me, what's the Lakers starting 5 and what's the Dodgers starting lineup? And of course, answering them, and then everyone goes like, oh, as a little kid, that kind of hypes you up, and kind of gives you a lot of confidence, so to speak. So yeah, so all of those factors coming into play sort of made me the diehard sports fan that I am.
Speaking of diehard sports fan, you're a diehard LA fan. You're a huge Dodgers fan. I see all your tweets. I know about that because you're a SoCal boy, and you're an Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders fan. Tell us about the story how you were once, well, I don't know if you still are, but once an LA Rams fan, then transitioned into an Oakland/Las Vegas Raider Nation faithful. Not
Yeah,
faithful.
well, actually, if you're
Empire.
if you're going to say Oakland, Las Vegas, you got to put LA in there, because
I
that's when
wanted to leave it out. I wanted to
yeah,
leave it out.
that's when I first became a fan. Yeah, so I mentioned my mom, had 7 brothers, and when I was a kid, early to mid 80s, Eric Dickerson, was building his legendary career, and Jim Everett was a great quarterback, and Flipper Anderson was a receiver, and I think even Henry Ellard was on some of those teams that really kind of went toe to toe with the 49ers in those years. And so we'd gather around my grandma's house and watch the Rams games. And that was my first favorite team. That my mom grew up in Santa Ana, which was down the road from Anaheim, where the Rams played, and they were all diehard Rams fans. And so that was my first team. But I like the Raiders, but there was obviously a much more family connection to the Rams. And so anyway, because my dad was more of a Raiders fan, but he wasn't necessarily as diehard about the Raiders as he was the Lakers and Dodgers. So it wasn't like necessarily passed on the way those other 2 teams were. And so anyway, at some point during my childhood, Al Davis moves the Raiders training camp to Oxnard, which is where we lived. And so so I don't know if I was 8 or however old I was at the time, but having the Raiders in our backyard, it completely switched allegiances. And that also coincided with the arrival of Bo Jackson. And they already had Marcus Allen, of course. And they had Tom Flores, who was, Mexican American like us, and Jim Plunkett, was a quarterback. And obviously, I think he had moved on, but, obviously they had the history there with him. But Bo Jackson was just so unbelievable of a player and athlete, and the baseball component. And then having them practice in our backyard during training camp was just really cool, because we'd see them out at restaurants and stuff like that. I remember my dad taking me to this Chamber of Commerce luncheon where Howie Long was there. I got to meet Howie Long,
Wow.
And I remember going to brunch at the hotel where the Raiders had training camp. And if you remember, Al Davis was very private and guarded. And training camp wasn't how it is now, where it's very fan friendly, and teams build facilities to house fans during training camp, and it's all kind of publicly displayed. It was very private in those days, or at least what the Raiders were. And they had those big, huge, chain link fences. They had the big green, plastic covering. So my brother and I would take turns, like jumping on each other's shoulders, so we could look over the fence to see inside of the practice. And I'm sure, we never got busted or whatever, because we were just walking through the parking lot, whatever. But I mean, just having that exposure to them and seeing that sort of stuff up close sort of switched allegiances, not to mention just how, much of a badass Bo Jackson was. And Tecmo Bowl, was, video games were just started becoming our lives, and how dominant he was in video games. So all of that coming together switched allegiances to the Raiders at that point. Not that I didn't like the Rams anymore, I did. But they were sort of obviously heading downhill and towards a move to St. Louis eventually. And the Raiders, kind of when this time was coming, were just about to, hit, that stardom with Bo Jackson and Marcus Allen there.
Dude, you go way back. You brought on a lot of players that brought flashback memories for me. You talk about Henry Ellard, wide receiver. I think he was number 80. Flipper Anderson, 88. Everett, quarterback. I remember the whole Jim Rome incident with him. That's the one thing that I will always remember when it comes to Jim Everett, is that interview. I remember watching that from home. I had no idea what was going on, because I didn't know who that guy was. But then he got it's just like, what are you doing? That will always stick in my mind. That was a great team. The LA Rams, I remember going to Candlestick Park, and there would be signs, and it said BLA on one side. The flip side of that said Go Niners. And anytime at Candlestick Park, when the Rams came to town, it was almost like a 50-50 ball game. Like it was like 50% Rams fans, 50% Niner fans. I thought the rivalry was very, very, it was really, really, it was like the Seahawks and Niners before the Seahawks came in within the division. That's how brutal it was.
Yeah, it was big time. It was big time until I think they met in the NFC Championship game, and Niners flexed on them and beat them like 30-3 or something like that. It was funny because both my teams, I think the Rams lost to the Niners 30-3, and then a couple years later, the Raiders, the game after Bo Jackson got hurt, they went up to Buffalo, got smashed like 51-3 or something like that. So both my teams in those days, once I started, following and becoming a big fan, had conference championship game humiliations, and I was like, man, just and obviously both teams, kind of, obviously the Rams had the greatest show on turf, but once they kind of went to St. Louis, I kind of stopped following them because, like I said, when I was 10, we moved to Sacramento, and then a few years later, the LA Raiders then became the Oakland Raiders. So then I was able to read about them and follow them a lot closer with them in Oakland. Meanwhile, the Rams moved to St. Louis, and there wasn't local coverage, and obviously in these days, there wasn't the internet wasn't as prolific as it is now. So you couldn't just follow a team no matter where you were in the world. You were sort of just subjected to whatever teams your local media covered, which at that time was the Raiders and Niners. So it just made sense to stick with the Raiders at that point, and the Rams, just didn't really know much about them at that point, in my early teens and all that good stuff.
Right. So huge Raider fan. Obviously, we're going to talk about and transition in today's NFL news. People want to know Raiders defensive end Carl Nassib, right, made huge headlines being the first openly active gay player, right? Talk about that and the impact that will have on the league moving forward.
Well, I hope, this is just the start, and other guys that, feel comfortable to truly live their life, out of the closet, so to speak, and can just be themselves. I hope this is the start of that. I remember covering Michael Sam back in 2014. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, came out, I think, shortly before the draft, was selected in the 7th round or so by the then St. Louis Rams. And I remember covering a preseason game, and he waited until and this is preseason, Ryan. So, it's still like, I don't know, at least a 75-man roster, 90-man roster, maybe. I forget, where the cup was, but obviously a huge locker room. He waited till every single last one of his teammates had left because he didn't want to be a distraction. He knew that the media was there, and they were all there waiting to interview Michael Sam, and he just didn't want that crowd to be around other teammates' lockers and kind of bumping into people, and just in other words, he was number one as a 7th round pick in an uphill climb to even make the team. And that was just such a daunting journey in and of itself,
Right.
to break into the NFL, to make it, let alone to go all through all these other things, like clearing out the locker room, kind of waiting. I just felt like when we did interview him, he just seemed exhausted. He seemed exhausted, just, sort of carrying this banner alone, yet trying to break into the NFL. And so by contrast, in looking at Carl the other day in the Instagram post that he made, he just seemed like it was such a relief, and he just seemed just so much lighter. Maybe the tension maybe that he had carried before was gone. He just seemed so much more confident. Now, obviously, having several years in the league to bolster that confidence, knowing that, okay, he can play in the NFL. There's no question that he doesn't have to worry about that. So now it's dealing with, I guess, how people receive him going forward, which, I'm sure he kind of tested the waters and got enough positive feedback that he felt comfortable to do something like this. And like I said, hopefully this is, the first of a road to normalcy for gay people, that they feel that they could belong and be out in the NFL. But I just think about, in just 7 years covering that Michael Sam story, how far we've come, because it just seems like in 2021 compared to 2014, we are just in a completely different world. And I know we are, but just seeing Michael Sam's journey, just even, for that short couple weeks, versus kind of what Carl, put out there, and who's, obviously once training camp comes and there's going to be obviously a long line of interview requests and everything like that. I think he now has like a month or so to kind of organize that, figure out, okay, how he's going to manage all of that. But I think, he has a pretty good, plan in place. And he said, he asked for privacy and he's not doing it for attention, just so that, other people may follow him or feel, more comfortable with themselves. But yeah, quite a contrast from 2014 and Michael Sam trying to do it back then.
Yeah, you hit it right on the nail, and great insight, by the way. I think you said it best. Hopefully it becomes normal, right? Like it's not newsworthy, because at the end of the day, it's like, I don't care what color skin you are, what race you are, what ethnicity or what background you're from, what sexual preference you choose. At the end of the day, we are all human beings. And that's what I try to instill here in the BEASTwriter family. Mel, who is lesbian, came on the show, and she got really emotional yesterday because we were talking about it. And she was just so happy that Carl Nassib came out, because I think in this, and I get goosebumps because it just like in this day and age, I feel like it should be normal by now. But because people have this perceived notion of my way or the highway, doesn't make it any less significant of what other people's feelings are. And I feel like that's something, and I'm getting kind of emotional about this because I have family members who are gay. So I feel their pain, because it's very painful to live a lie. And when you're living a lie, you're not really living your life. You're living someone else's life. I mean, it's no one else's business but your own. So I come like, man, Carl Nassib, man, he true pioneer, and Michael Sam, true pioneer. Without people like them, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I feel like we need to have this conversation because at the end of the day, we are all people and we all have feelings. So,
Yeah. And even I just think of a story recently where we had lunch with one of my wife's former coworkers, and she had found out that one of their mutual coworkers was gay, and my wife's friend had worked with this gentleman for 19 years, and only this kind of past year felt comfortable to be able to tell her, even though they were so close as coworkers and friends. And same thing with my wife. My wife was friends with him when she worked at that particular place, and so I just think of all the guys like that, who just haven't felt comfortable in their workplace to just be out, with even their people that they would consider friends there, and obviously Carl Nassib, working in one of the most testosterone driven industries and all that kind of stuff, just credit to him, and again, to further the point, hopefully this is the road to normalcy, just in all walks of life. For them.
Right. Let's stay within the Raiders. Obviously a huge Raider fan. I'm not sure how you feel about that first round pick, Alex Leatherwood. I'm a huge Alabama Roll Tide fan, but from a fan's perspective, what were your thoughts of that pick, and are you ultimately happy with that pick?
Well, I think ultimately, nobody can be happy with that pick until he shows what he can do, and obviously that we'll all forget about where he got drafted and the value and all this other nonsense that we immediately react to draft picks about if he plays well. So,
right.
but initially, it just felt like another Cleveland Farrell pick where you just feel like you could have got him, a little later in the draft and maybe got more value there. But again, he fits a need and obviously played well at Alabama and has a great pedigree. We're just going off of kind of what the consensus sort of seems to be about a certain player and a projection and all this and that. But how often do we see fifth rounders, sixth rounders, seventh rounders, undrafted players become superstars, studs? So at the end of the day, he'll have his chance to prove that he's worthy, and if he can become another serviceable starter there for the Raiders, then it won't really matter. Now the other picks have to step up and kind of hit too. You can't just get just serviceable starters. You got to have some develop into stars, and whether they come from the first round or second round or third round doesn't really matter at the end of the day, as long as you have that 53 that fits. So I believe that he can and will be a good player, and hopefully where he got picked will just be more just backstory to talk about 15 years from now.
True story. All right, let's go across the bay now. Well, they're not in the bay anymore. But let's go to the San Francisco 49ers. All signs point to Jimmy Garoppolo being the week one starter. Do you agree that should be the play, number one? And number two, do you think ultimately that will be the play?
Yeah, I think it will be, unless they can find a trade partner to swoop him up for a price that the 49ers couldn't pass up. But I think, they do have a loaded team. I think everybody comes back healthy, and there's no reason to believe that they shouldn't be in the Super Bowl mix. And Garoppolo played well enough, obviously, to get them to the Super Bowl. So, you just kind of look at the top quarterbacks in the league right now,
right?
And let's throw Drew Brees in there, even though he just retired. But when you think of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, you think about Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees, and they immediately came to mind. Even Phillip Rivers was one of those just long time starters, Pro Bowl type players, and they all sat, and I don't think there's any disadvantage to a player, a quarterback especially, sitting, unless your team is being hurt. But if you have a guy that's capable of getting there to the Super Bowl, then might as well give him a shot. And if he's the Alex Smith this year, and even if Jimmy G does play well, just like Alex Smith played well in 2017, got them to the playoffs. Even if Jimmy G does play well, then if you have this superstar in waiting in Trey Lance, then okay, then you pull the trigger in 2022. But I say, yeah, give Jimmy G a shot, and you have then, but you get Trey Lance ready to play, just like the Chargers got Justin Herbert ready to play. Pep Hamilton did a great job there. That because you never know what unforeseen circumstances come about, and he may have to go in sooner than necessary. But you hope that Jimmy G can get them to the playoffs and then approach 2022 with Trey Lance in mind.
Yeah, let's just hope that he doesn't have a Tyrod Taylor effect with the punctured lung before that was crazy. When I heard that, how do you like what is going on there? Like a punctured lung, like before kickoff, like I can't breathe. Like, yeah, no crap, you can't because you have a punctured lung, bro.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. All right. Moving on, the NFL just released news that the NFL Combine will begin a bidding process. Elaborate on that and how that system will actually take place moving forward in 2023.
Yeah, it'll be just like the Super Bowl and the draft now. Certain cities can bid and hope to host the Combine. And I'm one of these people that I love Indianapolis. I love the Combine there. I think it does a great job hosting it. I'm sure everybody who's listening has heard, the NFL media people, even members of scouting staff and personnel rave about Indianapolis and how everything is convenient and efficient. And, the doctors and the, are all right there in house and all the steak restaurants that are walking distance to the hotels and everything. It is great. But I remember growing up thinking that nothing was better than New York City for the NFL draft and Radio City Music Hall. Oh my gosh, but then you fast forward to a couple of years ago when, in Nashville, some 600,000 people attending there, and what an awesome event. And players still got picked. They still had those special moments with their families. And I think it's the same thing. The NFL obviously is not going to mess with the evaluation process. They're going to find a way to make sure that they are medically checked and every I is dotted and every T is crossed, and none of the team's concerns about that will be, will come into question. Like the NFL will take care of that first and foremost. But if you can turn it into an event with thousands of fans able to participate and make it another destination after the Super Bowl, a few weeks after that, and then lead up to the draft, and then why not do it? And just I was so excited for that Vegas draft and, guys going on the gondolas in the Venetian and all that sort of stuff. So, what a show that might have been and what still will be, when the draft returns there. But same thing for the Combine. What a show and how much fun that might be. Obviously you got to take care of business and you got to, get the guys evaluated and they'll do their drills and all that. But if you believe the scouts who always tell you, that the hay is pretty much in the barn. They just kind of want to confirm what they see. Yeah. The on-field evaluation, doesn't weigh as heavily as a lot of people think it does. And so if that's the case, and you got the doctors there, then let's make a show of it. And so I'm totally on board with it traveling around. I see the sort of potential of how cool it could be to have another NFL event out there that different cities can experience. If you're, let's say, in a city that may not get the Super Bowl, but maybe you can get the Combine, maybe you can get the draft and experience, that we saw how cool it was in Cleveland this year to kind of have that exposure for them, a great fan base. So I'm excited to see where the Combine goes and see how, what cities bid and all that, because if we can get, let's say a Combine in New Orleans, I mean, can you imagine, how much people love going to the steakhouses and going for drinks in Indianapolis. Imagine somewhere like that. Miami? Come on.
Hey, if that happens, I'll be there. I was actually supposed to go to the Las Vegas draft and then COVID hit and I'm like, oh, that sucks. That would have been fun. If it was in Las Vegas. When is that? Isn't Las Vegas doing it the following year? Aren't they supposed to do it like the following year?
2022
is
when it's scheduled to be back.
Yeah, that stadium. If you guys haven't checked out Omar Ruiz social media and the story that was on NFL Network, right? It was on NFL Network, and you just took Man, I am so jealous. You guys got to check out this guy's freaking footage. It's exclusive footage. Literally, I mean, it looks like you're walking into a palace. That's the vibe that I got. It's like I wasn't even walking into like Levi Stadium. Okay, great stadium, but there's something about the Raiders Stadium, Allegiant Stadium, that just gives me this wow factor. Like I'm in the dark side. Like I'm actually in it. Like where is Darth Vader? That's the vibe that I got because everything was so themed up, perfected in a way where it's like you felt that energy just by you walking around. And I know you were excited. I can tell you were excited, and it got me my juices flowing too. Yeah, check that out. Is it on NFL Network? Like, is it on
No,
YouTube?
it's, you could probably just go on my Twitter feed. The coolest part about that was the mayor of Flavortown, Guy Fieri, retweeted that like series of. I put like maybe 16 tweets together, like gave a tour.
Right.
And, yeah, it's a spectacular stadium. Can't wait for everybody to see it. Same with SoFi. I mean, SoFi is really awesome too, getting the host of the Super Bowl this year. And I can't wait. You know, fans obviously will make their debuts in those stadiums this season. So I can't wait for kind of the rest of the fans to see kind of what we've been all gushing about over the last year or so.
Dang, I'm jealous. You got Guy Fieri to retweet your stuff. Guy Fieri of the Food Network. I met him at Candlestick Park. No, Levi Stadium. When I was working at Levi Stadium, he was actually there. He goes to Niner games. I know he's a Raider fan, but he does go to Niner games. I see him there from time to time. All right, let's move on. Obviously, we talked about a lot of different things, but the one thing that I really want to talk about with you is, again, you're a minority breaking into the industry. Obviously, you had a lasting impact, and not only the Latino community, but the minority community and just the community in general. So my question to you is, obviously, what's the one piece of advice that you would give someone who's aspiring to be a journalist or a reporter or someone in that field? What's the number one piece of advice that you would tell that person if he was sitting in here in this conversation?
It's a good question. And I think all the standard answers, you know, they've heard before. So
Okay.
I think that the piece of advice I always give is to find a hobby. Find some place that you can go and be happy, because, you know, as much as I love football and I love my job and it's all great, you know, there are challenging times, there are hard moments, you know, there are frustrations, you know, just like with any job, you know, no matter how good, you know, NFL players, you know, tell you on Twitter how much, you know, unhappiness they have sometimes with, you know, different circumstances of their jobs, and they're freaking NFL players. So, you know, to find a hobby where you can go, a happy place, read things other than kind of what you are interested in for your job, you know, read just, you know, literature and become a well-read person outside of football or sports. And I think that makes you a better journalist, a better employee when you have a place to reset, you know, mentally, physically, maybe. For me, my hobby is beach volleyball. I play beach volleyball. So like I get out to the beach, I kind of zen out, I forget about, you know, kind of, you know, work for, you know, for a little bit. And it's physically resets me. It's good exercise and stuff like that. And then I come back refreshed and I'm ready to go and ready to, you know, kind of grind all day, because there is a lot of work that you kind of have to do to kind of sustain at this level. And obviously getting to this level, you know, might even be harder. So again, you got to have a place to kind of reset yourself. And then also, I think becoming just a well-rounded, well-read person kind of makes you a better journalist or a better broadcaster. You have more references. You can connect more dots when you hear about things and tell better stories. So things of that nature. So obviously, you got to work hard. You got to treat people right. You got to you know, do all the things that, you know, I'm sure you've heard a million times before, but those are a couple of things that maybe people don't think about that I try to pass along that might help in their career pursuits.
I like how you take that outside the box approach, because a lot of time the cliches, although they do work, it's something that everyone hears, you know, work ethic. I always talk about work ethic, so I'm a hypocrite, but I always talk about work ethic. You got to be passionate about what you do. You talk about hobbies. I like that, because pick up a hobby, because when you pick up a hobby, it's doing something that you actually like, right? It's not something that you don't like. You actually chose to do that. And then from there, you can expand. I think that's a really good perspective. And that's why I have you on the show, man. You're good
And
stuff.
I'll tell you, I stole that hobby one but it's true. Like I've applied it to myself.
Yeah.
I stole that. My buddy is an actor in LA, another San Diego State grad. We were roommates in college. He's an actor, and he had Dustin Hoffman come speak to his class one time.
Oh, what?
And so, somebody asked, what's your recommendation? Mr. Hoffman, is Academy Award winner. And he said, pick up a hobby, do something else, whether it's golf or whatever. Just do something where you kind of get away. You can't be sort of obsessed with acting 100% of the day. You have to give yourself a mental break and kind of check out every now and again and come back that way, because it requires a full-on dedication, 100% commitment, all that good stuff. And in order to be able to do that for years and years and years, you've got to be able to sort of take care of yourself and, mentally, physically, all that good stuff. So that's kind of, where I got that from, and I've applied it to my own life. And I think, having other people think about that, because like you said, all the things that they've heard a million times before, you got to work hard, be passionate about it. That is true. That's how I feel. That is obviously, you got to have all of that too, but just something to think about, when they're pursuing this.
Yeah. And again, I agree with you on 110%. And I like how you put things in perspective. Good stuff there. All right. We're going to wrap it up with the BEASTwriter 2-minute drill. Basically, I'm going to give you a series of questions. It's a this or that game. And you just say the first thing that comes to your mind, and then you also elaborate on your answer. You ready to get going?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. This is Omar. By the way, what's your middle name? It's Omar D. Ruiz. But see, I never knew that. I wanted to ask you that. I was like, what is that D for? All right. Omar D. Ruiz. Got it. Okay. So BEASTwriter 2-minute drills. Put it on the ticker. And we are ready to go. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. This is getting to know Omar D. Ruiz and the BEASTwriter 2-minute drill. Tacos or burgers?
Tacos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
me too.
That's hard. Oh yeah, because I got to elaborate. I mean, I can eat, tacos all day. People always go Taco Tuesday. For me, growing up, it's like taco every day. That's just what we had. But I love a mean cheeseburger. I make a great cheeseburger. My wife's favorite food's cheeseburgers. So I can go burgers, but if I had to pick one, which is what I'm asked to do here in this game, tacos.
I'm going to say tacos too, because again, in San Diego, I went to San Diego State. What was that fish taco place across the street from our campus? It was
Rubio's.
It wasn't Rubio. Well, Rubio's was on campus. No, it was like a little small mom and pop shop right next to Trujillo's on the other side. Gosh, I forgot the name. Anyways, it had the best fish tacos, and I don't like fish, dude. I know that sounds weird, but I am not a fan of fish. I'll eat it if I'm on prep for my shows for bodybuilding, but other than that, I will not touch fish. I love their fish tacos. They were delicious. So fish tacos win every day because it's so light and it's just so good. That's my story. It goes back to San Diego. Every time I think of you, I think of San Diego State. All right. Next BEASTwriter 2-minute drill question. Lobster tail or crab?
Lobster tail for sure. Crab, I don't like having to dig out the crab meat. I like the lobster tail. It's kind of pretty much ready to go. And it tastes better, I think.
I agree with you. People say crab tastes sweeter, but I said I'm a high maintenance type of a person. I don't like doing all the work. I want someone to do the work for me, and then it's done. Just pull out the tail. It's done. You're good to go. By the time you're still working across the table, you're still working on that leg or that claw. I'm already 2 lobster tails in, man. You're way behind the learning curve.
That's
all right. Yeah, dude. All right. Dogs or cats?
Dogs for sure. I've never had, I never really had dogs or cats growing up, but I'm just much more of a dog lover than a cat.
Same here. I've had dogs my whole life. Love dogs. Nothing against cat lovers. I like cats too, but I like dogs a little bit more. All right. Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, pancakes for sure. Dupars in a farmer's market in LA, to die for.
What's it called?
Dupars.
I've never heard of that. I'm going to look it up now.
They're awesome. Just good old fashioned buttermilk hotcakes. Just amazing.
All right. I got to check that out. Dupars in LA. Got to check that out. All right. Next one. This is a pretty hard one, man. I'm not going to lie. Netflix or Disney Plus?
Oh, that is a hard one. If I had to pick one, Netflix for me. Currently, we are Disney Plus because of the kids. But if it's me, it's Netflix.
Do you like the Mighty Ducks?
I do. Yeah. You mean, oh, we haven't watched the new show because we showed the kids part 1. We still got to watch part 2 and 3 with them, and then we're going to watch the series.
Okay, I don't want to ruin it, man. Hey, let's just say I like Mighty Ducks, and I loved it. I loved it. It's like the Cobra Kai version of Netflix on Disney Plus.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to watching it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and there's another one called The Big Shot. Have you seen The Big Shot yet?
Oh, that was filmed by our house in San Pedro.
What?
The one with John Stamos?
Yeah.
The Big Shot, yeah. That was filmed all around our neighborhood. Yeah. So yeah, I want to watch that too, just so I could see, hey, maybe there's our house or something. You know what else they filmed out across the street from our house is Dead to Me. If you're a Netflix person.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Dead to Me, all right there. Yeah.
What? That's dope, dude. You gotta watch it, man. What's wrong with you?
Mission Impossible 2 was also filmed out. We saw Tom Cruise when they filmed that right out front in our house.
That's crazy. The only cool story I have about someone filming close to my house, which it wasn't even my house, was my grandparents. Oh, is the audio out? Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, is the audio on? So that is interesting because you have so many stories like that. Like I said, the only thing that's close to me having a type of story like yours where people are filming around my house was my grandparents' house. When they lived in San Francisco on Russian Hill, they owned an apartment complex. And at the very top, they had to use their electricity in that viewpoint in the movie Princess Diaries. So when you see that view,
wow.
Yeah, that's my grandparents' view. So people know who knew about that. But yeah, that's pretty much the story. It had nothing to do with me. All right, let's continue on with the BEASTwriter Family questions. What's that?
Hello?
What's going on?
I have a hard out at 11:30.
Oh, dude. Okay. We'll let you get going, man.
Go.
All right. Thank you so much, man, for tuning in. Appreciate it. All right.
Bye,
Later.
Ryan.
All right. Take it easy, my man. Mahalo. All right. That was Omar Ruiz from the BEASTwriter Family show. He had to head out. See, he's a busy guy. But yeah, the audio was off today. All right. So let's get to some of your questions. Dasik Warner says, I need to go watch those 2 already. Been sleeping on them for too long. Yeah, you got to watch Mighty Ducks and The Big Shot. In fact, if you don't watch those 2 shows, you're doing yourself a disservice. You really got to watch those and see what's going on there. All right. Let's see what's going on here in the BEASTwriter Family show. You're to ask me, like I said, the Mighty Ducks, the Game Changers, is equivalent to what Cobra Kai is on Netflix. It's just on Disney Plus. So you can see the parallels and the comparisons there. All right, let's get to some of your questions. If you have any questions, we're going to open this up to a live stream show. Please be sure to go ahead, and I'm going to include it in the banner. I'm just going to get it up there for you. And we are off and running. I'm also going to include this on YouTube and all the other social media outlets so you guys can join the chat and talk to me live. So let me just go ahead and do this. And I will put this in here. Let's put the live stream call in. And I'll get going. I have to get to the gym, but I want to field some of your questions before I go ahead and do that. All right. All right, there it is. It's on YouTube now. So go ahead and check that out. If you want to join in the chat, let me just see if I should put it on this. Am I allowed to do that? Cannot do it there. All right. So go ahead and join the chat if you'd like, and we can go ahead and get started and answer any of the questions that you have. And I'm just going to include it on all the streams that I'm in right now so we can kind of be on the same page. All right, there you go. All right. So that was a good show, guys. I think I'm going to stop this one short because I got to get to the gym. It's 11:30. I actually have to get out as well. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. That was Omar Ruiz from NFL Network. Had some great insight on Jimmy Garoppolo. Talked about his story, his advice on breaking into the NFL media. Obviously, talk about breaking barriers as a Latino in the NFL media. And also talked about him being a Raiders fan, and the big news surrounding Carl Nassib being the first openly active gay NFL player. So with all that being said, I just want to say thank you and mahalo for tuning in to this live stream. We will do it all again tomorrow with another hot guest. Stay tuned for that one. I will be on another YouTuber's live stream. It was the Camper Report. I'm going to be on his show, and we're going to talk football. I think he wanted to talk Packers. He also wanted to talk about Niners and anything in between. So we cover all 32 NFL teams here in the BEASTwriter family. I'm going to go on with this 14-year-old kid and talk football with him. So go follow this guy. And again, I'm going to include his information on the community page on YouTube. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good day. BEASTwriter out.